All right, welcome everybody to Rxperience. I'm your host Chad, alongside my co-host Tom, and we have a special guest today because it's Jim from our policy advocacy, all things government affairs, and we're talking about the fly-in, which is coming up.
February 25th, 2026 will be our day on the Hill with the whole training day on the 24th, so the Tuesday before.
We do this every year. People need to come to the fly-in. Like if there's a year, I think we say this every year. If there's a year to come to the fly-in, it's this year. But if you think about, we typically will do the fly-in maybe late spring, sometimes early summer. We're doing it consciously in February this year. We have all of the aftermath of the implementation of the IRA, which is front and center for pharmacies, long-term care pharmacies. There's all kinds of activity in healthcare. And to us, that means there's opportunities for pharmacists on the reimbursement front, whether reimbursement for dispensing, reimbursement for operating, reimbursement for clinical activities, reimbursement through Incident 2. There's a lot of talk about making sure pharmacists are fairly reimbursed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's front and center for everything. And importantly, as you mentioned, just rewinding the clock a little bit, we have moved it forward in the year to February, in large part because, Congress moved the end of the year last year to, instead of being December 31st, like the rest of the world, the end of the year for 2025 was now January 30th. So, Congress will just be picking up the ball to pass all of its appropriations bills. If Congress is going to do another reconciliation push, that will also be beginning in that time frame. So had we used our traditional date in April, a lot of the vehicles that we would be looking to use to advance some of these reimbursement priorities for us, we wouldn't have the opportunity to be part of that conversation. So we are pushing it forward. And you're right, front and center is reimbursement. We all know the reality of the IRA has hit pharmacies fundamentally hard, but we also knew some of those edits were coming. Some of those brands were going to go generic. We've known for a long time there's structural problems with the reimbursement. That's why we've had such a focus on the Incident 2 billing. And thankfully, this administration and this Congress have sort of worked hand in hand to make a lot of those priorities that our pharmacists can bill those G codes. Now, granted, you still require some relationship with the physician to do the billing, but that's a huge avenue that we've been able to preserve open in large part because of the voices that came to last year's fly-in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can now not talk about, hey, this is going to happen, but this is happening. We're feeling this effect now. And by that time we get to late February, there's going to be some outstanding, payments, some reconciliation, frustration. It's certainly going to be real. And we can certainly talk about true experiences.
Yeah, and if you think about all the things that we'd try to do, I hate to say it all comes back to reimbursement, but ultimately your pharmacy practice, your pharmacist practice relies on reimbursement to survive. So when we're doing things like trying to amplify the consultant pharmacist role with monitoring antipsychotics in Project Pause, we're doing that to center the pharmacist as integral to a process that, yeah, you're supposed to do, but ultimately may reward you in the fact that we'll have to pay you a little bit more to do this because it's a little more complicated now, and you're a little bit more responsible now. And we're not going to apologize for that. We're trying to make practice better for pharmacists, whether they're practicing as consultants or clinically, or like we mentioned, dealing with the ramifications of IRA and pricing changes that are going on all over the place. And it's twofold. We want your reimbursement. We want you to have a better supply fee or dispensing fee. We want you to be able to get paid for the services you provide that maybe you're not paid for now. And we want reform to the payers, the PBM reform, because they're the ones holding down some of that reimbursement. So you're trying to chip away multiple places, make things better for pharmacy practice.
Well, and we know that that's the way things are going, right? We're going in the direction of team-based care, value-based care. The question is this going to be like IRA, where pharmacy is handed a set of responsibilities and no reimbursement for it?
Correct.
In fact, a reduction in margin, or are we going to be at the table demanding fair and reasonable reimbursement. And I know that that's always a little complicated political term, fair and reasonable, but in that realm, we have to be demanding something that's fair and reasonable. Otherwise, we can't deliver these services, right? Like, it's simple. We know these things are necessary. We also know that pharmacists, even outside of our long-term care context, remain the most accessible healthcare provider. So further reductions in pharmacy is going to be less healthcare for everyone, right?
Correct.
But no, I think front and center, as you mentioned, I'll just sort of, lay them out as like the actual legislation. So, we'll be talking, of course, about provider status again. So Equitable Community Access for Pharmacy Services Act. That has had a subject matter hearing in Ways and Means, which is a big deal. So that's been talked about in Ways and Means, which sets the stage for a bill markup. So we're at a stage with that legislation we were not before. Looking at the PBM reform, I think everyone agrees that that's going to happen when Congress needs to pay for. I think it's important for us to use the fierce urgency of now to push the narrative. Hey, don't wait for a pay for, like, get this done or find something you need to pay for and partner it with this, right? Because we need PBM reform now. Because even if we get the legislation we're all expecting, it's 18 months from the day Congress enacts it or it's signed by the president until any of those provisions take effect. So that's another year and a half of continued games from our friends at the PBMs while they figure out how to set the deck another way. And then, we're talking about the long-term care supply fee. That's a direct reimbursement. But again, that's only a short-term patch to the bigger issues that we're sort of talking about now, which is like fundamentally changing reimbursement. But without that bridge, we can't get to a place where we're getting it. And that's also why, ECAPS is so important, right? You got to get into Part B to be paid for those services. So that's the legislation. And then, for years, we've been working on Project Pause and antipsychotic stewardship. Hopefully, we've been successful, knock on wood. Our language in the FDA bill has become law twice. We're waiting for Congress to pass the CMS funding bill to see if our language becomes law. But that's been a really productive opportunity for us. And so I think we're evaluating what are opportunities to leverage that appropriations process on other issues. And one we're thinking a lot about is a chief pharmacy officer within CMS, or is there something within the DEA realm we want to go after? Because that's a different funding bill than the CMS bill.
Absolutely.
So, Jim, let's talk a little bit more about the specifics on the fly-in. And I've been really blessed to be able to come up there a few times. And I could tell you just, as a pharmacist, thinking across, the nation and talking to other pharmacists, in general, they think, yes, Jim and Chad, they're going up and they're fighting for these things. And you are. I mean, you guys spend 365 days a year fighting for pharmacies. But the fly-in's a little bit different. And I want to address a couple different things. First of all, it can be a little like, that's not my thing, that's Jim and Chad's thing. And then the second thing is, I don't know how to talk to a senator or a congressman. Like, I'm not prepared to do that. But you've been able to really overcome both of those issues. And so can you talk a little bit more about kind of the real training and handholding that you guys do the first day when we first come in to prepare us to go out in Capitol Hill?
Yeah, so this year it'll be Tuesday, February 24th, and we'll start at 1:30. And so those are deep dives on the actual legislation, the ones I just laid out, right? The provider status bill, the supply fee bill, PBM reform, and then whatever we're working on in appropriations, be it Project Pause, Chief Pharmacy Officer, or all both. We're going to walk you through with an in-depth panel with subject matter experts, me, but also people outside of ASCP who do this every single day, who know the ins and the outs of these bills, who also are in those meetings with staff. So they're going to be able to prepare you for, hey, this is the question you're going to get 80% of the time, right? So we're going to make sure that all of that you're prepared for going in with in-depth knowledge on each one of these issues that we're talking about. And then once we've got you as subject matter experts, we have a whole separate training dedicated to just how to hold the meeting, how to talk about these issues, how to frame what you do, and then really helping folks understand that the person sitting across the table from them is probably not going to look like them. They're not going to look like me. They're going to be 10 years younger than me. They're going to look a lot like the guy behind the camera I'm looking at right now. But like your
probably
average
25 to 30 years younger than Chad, by the way.
Right, exactly.
But your average congressional
Youngins.
staffer is in their, mid to late 20s. On the Senate side, maybe a little bit older. You might see someone who's in their early 30s, but that's who you're going to be talking to. And I think the other thing it's really important for folks to remember is they are not the subject matter expert, right? They work for the congressperson, but especially on the House side, you're handling 5 to 7 different issues. And so your expertise is based on your interest, your boss's interest in their committees. So you may be meeting with somebody who has no concept of a long-term care facility, no concept of long-term care pharmacy. In that moment, you are the expert. You are the person who is delivering care to the people that this person was elected to represent. Like, you have to understand and own that power. And I think that's important. And we want to get you sort of ginned up and super empowered and encouraged in understanding your role to then go into those meetings. And at the end of the day, look, we all know that no one can know everything. So we also prepare you with, hey, I don't know exactly the answer to that question, but I'll get back to you, or Jim's going to get back to you. And then you get to pass it off to me, and it becomes my job to solve your problem.
I think the other thing to think about is when you come to the fly-in, I think that there's a couple things that are really impressive about it. One, you're going to meet with your people, and, people from your state, potentially people from your district where you live, and nobody looks at you like a representative looking at somebody from their district. It's almost like they pay more attention to you, certainly, than they would pay to any of us, because they know that you're actually a voter and you're in their area. So they're going to listen to you, and you're not in those meetings alone. Like, there's other people in there.
Everything is in a group. Groups are 4 to 7 people. So you're not flying solo in any of these meetings. But no, you're exactly right. And they also know you're not just one voter, right?
Right.
If you have a good experience, you're going to go home and tell your coworkers. You're going to tell your husband. You're going to tell your family. They know you're worth 30 or 40 votes. So that's why they might look at you like a cupcake when they're hungry.
You got patience too. I mean, you interact with a lot of people, and they know that.
No, exactly. And that's huge. And
I've always enjoyed, a little apprehensive, and then you go in there and they meet with people all the time from different industries, but their goal is to make you feel comfortable because they want to understand. They want to be knowledgeable themselves. And so, they're open ears, they're taking notes, they're asking, questions, and they want to understand what's important to you, what's important to your industry. I mean, this is what they get paid to do, is to kind of be the experts to consult their congressman or their Senate personnel or whoever it is. And so they really, really are encouraging, trying to say, hey, be comfortable.
Yeah. And our issues are not mainstream issues, right? It's not like we're walking in there about stuff that's on CNN. I can guarantee you, I've had many conversations with staffers, and one of my favorite that sticks out to me is, we explain who we are, we explain what we do. We were talking to them about Incident 2 billing and Project Pause. And as we're leaving, the staffer goes, this was so great. I really appreciate everything you do to take care of folks. My context for nursing homes is my boyfriend's grandmother is in one. That is her entire context for nursing homes. We spend a whole time talking to her about psychotropic management, appropriate prescribing of antipsychotic medication, making sure that patients aren't being chemically restrained while ensuring access to medication, and, how things are surveyed. And then over here, how we provide clinical services in support of physicians and care teams. And her takeaway was, oh, you're the people who take care of my boyfriend's grandma. But hey, that's a good moniker to have.
They do resonate with actual stories. I had this grandmother, I had this patient, and they suffered, and here's the situation. And that hits home, especially if it's in their state.
I don't know, Chad, do you want to share our conversation at the holiday party with the congresswoman who we said, we do long-term care, and her response was,
I don't remember.
Oh, I used to sell a lot of long-term care insurance.
That's right.
And she started talking about long-term care insurance plans.
That's right. I mean, the other thing to think that I think people need to think about is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington too. Like, you're walking past the Supreme Court building. You're walking into the Capitol. You're going to these congressional buildings. You're walking these halls. There's a little bit of, America is a good country. Democracy does work. Like, it's fun to be here and do these kinds of things. So you should come, if for no other reason than that. It is cool to walk through the halls of Congress and think, I can't believe I have access to go talk to my congressperson about something that's important to me. I mean, that's a cool thing.
It's very cool. And I mean, I would also say the further away you are from DC, the less likely they are to see people from your district.
Yes.
So, the folks from Washington State and Idaho get so excited when there's somebody from their state who took the time to come all the way here and to see them. And then they really roll out the red carpet. But yeah, you do. You're going to walk right. If you've got a meeting on the House side and then a meeting on the Senate side, you walk right across the courtyard with the big white building with the big dome, and then the Supreme Court is directly opposite that. You can see the Washington Monument. If you have a little bit of time, you can slip into the Library of Congress. You get to eat lunch in the same cafeteria where you'll see Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer and, Buddy Carter and Diana Harshberger, because they all eat in the same cafeteria. There's only 5 places to eat up there.
Yeah. I just think it's an experience in and of itself. It's critically important to move issues about pharmacy practice forward, our issues as a healthcare sector. And it's fun.
It is fun. And I mean, this is me speaking as a staffer. We don't hear enough provider voices. You hear a lot from the insurance companies, a lot from the PBMs. You do hear from the facilities, but very rarely do you talk to a provider or do you talk to patients. And unfortunately, a lot of our long-term care patients can't speak for themselves anymore. So the folks that have to do that are their providers. And I can tell you I'm one person, and yes, I'm ASCP's lobbyist, and my job is to be up there and to be the voice. One of the PBMs has one lobbyist per 5 offices. There's 535 offices, so do the math on how many lobbyists they have. I cover 535 offices plus the territories, because I care about Puerto Rico and Guam and Virgin Islands too. And then, versus this is what we're up against. But because we have a better message, because we are the white hats, because we are providing that patient and provider voice, that one meeting you have can outweigh 20 or 30 of their meetings, because they're just, hawking their business.
Yeah, I'm always reminded, I think of our members from South Dakota that have come here and really built strong relationships. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think of South Dakota, it's out in the West. It's got a smaller population, but when we brought them here, if they meet with Senator Thune, who's the majority leader of the Senate, and they get as excited as they get to see an actual constituent from their state, it's powerful. It moves the ball.
No, it does. And I mean, it shows that you're serious, right? That this is an issue that you brought the time. But yeah, exactly, right? Not to quote Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some animals are, yes. Yeah, all senators are great. There's only 100 of them. But John Thune decides what bills get called and when. And so having that relationship that you build, for years, decades, it was Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. But the folks from South Dakota have built that relationship, and now he's in leadership. And those are able to pay dividends too, because not only is he in a position to move the things that matter, but while taking that leadership role, he still kept the provider status bill, right? So he is making it clear that as the most important senator, this is a priority for me.
Big deal.
So, if we don't do this, life will move on. But talk a little bit about, Jim, you've been here several years now, about the impact that this makes. Because again, I think some people just say, well, that's someone else is going to take care of that, Jim, or someone else is going to take care of that. But the impact that you've seen from the fly-in and from us going and having these meetings that you've experienced personally post the fly-in.
Yeah, it's in some ways it's about connecting folks to the issue and the face, right? It's one thing for me to talk about them and have a super in-depth conversation on psychotropics. It's another thing for them to sit across the table from one of our pharmacists and know that that's the person who's delivering the care. And, you may be softening the ground for me to come in on the backside and have a more in-depth conversation. But now they know that, hey, this is what ASCP is. This is who they are. This is what they care about. I think I think about it a lot as we're pushing Boulder up a hill, right? It's not a Sisyphean effort. There are plateaus, and Chad and I are here pushing the ball up the hill. You guys all come in and help us get it to the next plateau, right? That changes the conversation. It moves something forward like provider status and helps us get that hearing that starts the ball down the table. You're the folks who come in and get us the Project Pause advances that have been made on the FDA side with the box warning. That wouldn't have been possible because the amount of ground that just the two of us can cover, and we've got Will too, which helps, but the amount of ground we can cover versus you all come in, there's 40 of you each have 6 meetings, it's 240 meetings, right? We've talked to almost half of Congress in one day. We have not successfully replicated Chat or I yet to be able to do that. So that helps get us to that next level. And then I think, as I talked a little bit about on the front side, reconciliation is the vehicle, folks. Like, if there is a train to get on in the near future for any of these things we care about, it's reconciliation. And that train's going to start moving. So if we want to get to the plateau where there's a platform for this train, we need to get the ball up another level or two. And you guys coming in really helps us make that push. The timing is perfect with the congressional calendar.
Not only that, it's an election year.
It is an election year.
So they're going to be super excited to see people. And it's probably going to lead to, hey, come visit my pharmacy, come visit my nursing home, because they're going to want to do those kinds of things as they roll toward their election. And that makes them listen more.
Yeah.
And every year, again, as we know, we gain millions and millions of more seniors, and that is going to be, set on fire here the next couple of years, and we're going to be adding tens of millions of more seniors, and they're certainly need to be very aware of that. I believe ASCP's going to become even more front and center, being the leader pharmacy provider for geriatrics, and that being that kind of attention, I believe, is going to wake up some senators and congressmen that maybe didn't know, or congresswomen that didn't know what ASCP was all about. And so just bringing that attention and that relevance is going to let us be more front and center for future conversations or future asks from them.
Absolutely.
No, because look, once we get our agenda asked, we got to come back with something else. We know that, even going back to where we started, the reimbursement system needs to fundamentally change. A lot of that will be regulation and policy. A lot of that will also happen in the marketplace. But we have to at least set the stage for the government side of this, which means things like getting into Part B and being providers, which then, it's only for test treat, for infectious disease right now in the short term, but once your foot's in the door, you can start expanding. And some of our biggest challenges right now are, just the issue with getting a waiver from CMS for the G code is you're not a provider and the Social Security Act, we can't do it. Once we pass provider side, that's no longer an excuse, right? So even though it sounds like we're just talking about test and treat, there are second and third order ramifications to this that really then start affecting reimbursement and then clinical practice.
Absolutely. So I guess bottom line is register.
Yeah.
Show up.
So a couple things about registration. When you register, we really, really need you to register with your home address. So like where you're registered to vote, that zip code. I know a lot of folks, your company may pay for your ASCP membership, and that is what goes on there. Make sure on that form you just fill in your personal zip code. And then for those folks who are serving multiple facilities, there is a space in there for you to tell us where your facilities are. So not only can we pair you up with the congressman who represents you, your house, and your family, but also the facilities you work at. And that, even though you're not exactly a voter in their district, as Chad was saying, those patients are all voters in that members district.
Yeah, those employees. And
those employees.
And you're going to share this story with them.
And so like for those of you who live in Big Kansas 1, this is less of a concern. But those of you who might live somewhere like Southern California or Chicagoland, the lines there are very tight. So us having the exact zip code is really important. And then, we'll partner you up. You're generally partnered up by state. So if you're from Illinois and you know other ASCP Illinois folks, expect to be with them. So bring your friends. We do have a hotel block at the Embassy Suites, and it's right next to the King Street Metro station. So if you want to come in early or stay late and explore DC, that's definitely something you can do. Do the White House tour, do the Congressional tour, do the Smithsonian's. This is a moment if you want to do the broader DC thing that isn't just the fly-in. This hotel is really well located for you to jump on the Metro and be anywhere you need to be in DC.
And it's America 250.
It is
There's
the
gonna be a lot
250
going on this year. Like, it's a super fun time to be here.
There is. Like, we had a cool projection on the Washington Monument.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's supposed to come back, but they're doing all kinds of really cool stuff for 250. And then Alexandria's historic little town. So our local little town's doing a bunch of cool stuff. So it's always a good time to be in DC. And if you want to stick around, you probably couldn't find a better time to spend a couple of extra days.
And Tom, you're going to be here.
Absolutely. I mean,
so if you want to meet Tom in person?
Well, for the fly-in, I didn't do that most of my career. And then the first time I did it, I thought, I'm never not going to do this. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I learned so much. And then just being able to have that opportunity to actually talk to your state representative, was pretty significant. Once you go fly in, you never go back, I guess.
There you go.
We'll let you go back, but you'll want to do it again and again and again, because it's a great time. And then Jim, you do such an amazing job at preparing us. I felt when I first went there, like, I've got no idea what I'm talking about, but after that initial meeting the night before, I'm like, yeah, I'm confident. And so if you have any hesitations out there that you don't feel like you know your way around kind of what we're asking for, I promise you, within a few hours, Jim will have you pumped and ready to go.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the hotel, because it's, travel can be expensive. It's difficult around here in particular, especially in DC. We have a great hotel rate. We have a great hotel. It's right on the Metro line. Mm-hmm. There's so many advantages to coming to fly in from that perspective too. So February 24th, 25th.
February 24th, 25th.
It's coming up. Book now.
Wear warm clothes and wear comfortable shoes, because you're going to need both.
Yes,
right.
You will. And, one of the things we always do too, for those who are worried, the last meetings on the 25th, they're normally done about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So if you want to grab like a 6:30 flight home, you don't want to spend an extra night. You're looking to do your fly out plans. 6:30, we normally are able to get Congressman Carter is always gracious enough to arrange us a room for folks to put their bags in, so you can leave directly from the Hill to go to it. And we arrange a bus in the morning, so you can put your bags on the bus with you, drop them off in the room. We'll have somebody there all day. You can go do all of your meetings, grab it, and depart. And then for those who are New York corridor, the train is Amtrak. You can walk directly from the Capitol to Amtrak with your bag. So if you want to come in on the train, that's also a way to do it. If you're on the Acela corridor, or I guess if you're in Richmond going down 95.
Absolutely.
Yep. Easy.
All right, everybody.
Awesome. Hope to see you all at the fly-in February 25th and 25th and 24th.
Thanks for listening.
Register now.
See y'all.